Hi everyone, Tracy DW here. I hope you're all making the most of the month of March. We're nearly through the first quarter of 2024. Can you believe it? How time flies. If you've listened to the previous podcast episode, then you will know that I'm doing a special promotion for the month of March 2024, which is the Name That Podcast Challenge, where for each episode for this month only, I'm going back into past episodes and releasing segments from 5 episodes. Each segment is around about 90 seconds in length, and I've tried to stay away from the series episodes with more than one part so that it's easier for you, especially if you're a new co-listener, and to whom I'd like to extend a warm welcome. If you're new to Stories to be Told, then now is the best time to listen to these episodes throughout this month, because it will certainly give you a taste of the range of content that I've covered across the topic of the British Empire and Britain's colonial past, otherwise known as my learning journey. Once again, I'd just like to say to you all that I'm so glad and so grateful for all your support and consistent listenership throughout the years. I've been rather quiet of late, and that's because I've been busy with other projects, such as studying for a diploma, but I've also been doing a little acting and exploring some voiceover workshops, and yes, there is the music as well. I've been working on some home video content with my pianist Tess and participating in the live online workshop with the House Gospel Choir. I also have a special feature coming up on a Croatian radio station called Radio False, and that will be broadcast live on the radio station at the end of April. And I've also taken a leap into the metaverse to look at performance opportunities there, as well as working on other promotional content for the next track, which will be released later in this year. So, I'll definitely keep you up to date. If you want to have a listen to my music tracks, you don't have to go too far. You can probably stay on this platform, unless you're listening on storiestobetold.com, and after you've listened to this podcast episode, just type into your search Tracy DW. Have a listen and let me know what you think. Anyway, let's get back to this podcast episode and the 5 segments for part 2 of Name That Podcast. So here we go with podcast clip number 1. Name That Podcast. Independence Day for the Democratic Republic of Congo was set for the 30th of June 1960. This was agreed at the Congolese Round Table Conference held in Belgium in January of that same year. Patrice was not only fortunate enough to have his 6-month prison sentence cut short, but he was also able to attend the conference. He shone once again when his party, the MNC, not only won the first democratic election in his country, but he was also asked by the Belgian government to form a national unity government in time for Congo's celebrations. Despite achieving a diverse unit of government, one could question whether this government would really be able to achieve what he had always hoped for: unity and loyalty amongst his people. But does diversity always bring about unity and loyalty? Such ideals will always appeal to the masses, but it may have been far too early on in the Congo's freedom journey to actually be achievable. Perhaps at that time, the unity that he needed most was from those whose idea of change could be reconciled with his own, and the loyalty that he needed most was loyalty to him from those who were less interested in furthering their own agenda. It's difficult to achieve a balance. 2 decades later, when it became the turn for Zimbabwe independence, Robert Mugabe placed all his hopes into a one-ethnic political party and surrounded himself with those who were loyal to him. And we all know the consequences of what happened next. Clip number 2. Name that podcast. After 7 decades of the Queen, the contrast in energy, outlook, and disposition of a king occupying the British throne will be fascinating to observe. For 84% of us in Britain who are under the age of 70 will never have experienced anything like this. What will the new monarch bring to the role? And how will he make it his own? Although he has vowed to retain the same values and vision for the monarchy that his predecessor upheld, he may well have a different approach, given the fact that he has spent much of his life being a king in waiting. This position has enabled him to immerse as fully as he possibly could into an ever-changing world, granting him the fortune to observe its intricacies, admire its diversity, and develop an awareness of its many challenges. Given this, how will the new king translate this foreknowledge into the foresight that he needs to guide him through his reign? Clip number 3. Name that podcast. He did so much to help me join the dots and make connections between past events and the reason for why the world is the way it is today. I learnt that day that the Middle East was the seat of power to 3 empires spanning over 2,000 years, that it is the birthplace of 3 of the world's major religions, the gateway between Europe, Africa and Asia, and why this was so important for world trade, exploration, discovery and colonialism. I realised that the conflict and struggles that have happened in this part of the world conveyed the interests and roles of many of the world's superpowers. I began to understand, as I grew older and became more interested in history, that the wider world and everything within it was so interconnected, but also that history was often taught in schools in a disconnected way. Clip number 4. Name that podcast. And finally, where its indigenous population would be oppressed by apartheid. In 1867, diamonds were discovered in Kimberley, just 6 years prior to Nokuthula's birth. A decade later, in 1877, Britain would formally annex the Transvaal and defeat the Zulus in Natal. The First and Second Boer Wars, 1880 to 81 and 1899 to 1902, transpired between the British and Dutch, with the discovery of gold in the Transvaal marking an interlude between the two wars. And in 1902, the Treaty of Vereeniging unionised Natal, the Transvaal and Orange Free State to form what is now known as South Africa. 10 years later, in 1912, and finally, clip number 5. Name that podcast. But was it really Africa or not? Over the course of time, some thought so, but others not. It's just a part where the colour folks live, and where the rest began to rot. With a few seeds and some tools, they set their shoulders to the plough, to work, to sow, to build and grow, as only they knew how. But the land was hard, infertile, and the jobs low paid and few. They scratched their heads. They were confused and didn't quite know what to do. They had suffered the heat of one type of hell and now the cold of another. Then realised that this new kind of hell had just frozen over. Only a third had regular jobs, and though others got to travel, the work seemed to mirror the old kind of enslavement, but only this time without the shackles. So there you have it, part 2 of Name That Podcast. Now, I've decided to make a few changes. I'm not going to have 2, but 3 winners who will be receiving their exclusive Stories to be Told merch bundle. Just visit the homepage at storiestobetold.com and you'll be able to see the full details, okay? I've also decided to run the challenge beyond March and will close the competition on July the 31st when I'll announce all 3 winners on my live show in August from a surprise location. So if you think you have the 5 correct answers from part 1 or from this, the second episode, then send me a message via the website, email, or on the SpeakPipe link with your name and a contact email, and give the titles of the episodes featured in either or both parts, if you're feeling up to it. You can enter as many times as you like, but you can only win 1 merch bundle. Now, before I go, don't forget what I call the heart and soul of the Stories to be Told movement. My stories, or poetic narratives, Caribbean Wind, Caribbean Rush, Knights at the Round Table, the Berlin Conference 1884, and Gone with the Wind, Macmillan's Speech for Change. Remember that these are all available on the website in both Kindle and paperback formats, and in ebook format at Apple Books and all other digital platforms. And also the publication of the latest 4 titles. Now, if you want to find out more, just visit storiestobetold.com and check out the learning platforms for The Journey's End, Giving Back Hong Kong, Bite from the Big Apple, A Story for New York, Hope for Zimbabwe, Arise the Phoenix, and A Story for South Africa. Feel free to like, follow and share us on social media when you visit the website. Just click on whichever social media link you would like to follow us on. And as always, it's a pleasure and a privilege to share my learning journey with you in this podcast series, and I encourage you to either begin or continue your own. History is a matter of fact or perspective. I'm Tracy DW, and this is a Stories to be Told podcast. Stay safe, stay well, stay blessed, keep listening. I'm wishing you all the best of luck, and I cannot wait to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening again, and I'll see you for the 3rd and final part on the next page.